Hello and welcome to the Rugby World Cup 2023 preview here with NBC Sports. Alex Corbisiero joined by USA Rugby Hall of Famer Dan Lyle. And Dan, this is the 10th Rugby World Cup, a huge momentous moment in France coming up all across NBC Sports platforms for the next 2 months. How excited are you for all of this?
Yeah, excited about your a la natural background there in San Diego. I know you're getting on a plane to the UK and going to be in France for part of it as well. We'll see you in France as well, but super excited. This is the second iteration for France. 2007 was the last one, but hey, all these pools are juicy, Alex.
Absolutely, mate. And yeah, the perks of living in San Diego, you can film outside, especially on a hectic day, but we're getting all this together. But let's get into the pools. And as we look at Pool A, this has two of the tournament favorites sitting in the same pool. Opening game of the competition with France and New Zealand. There's also Uruguay, Namibia, and Italy. But Dan, everyone's focusing on those two big teams in this pool, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Antoine Dupont led side in France, being the home side. Look, in 2007, they lost at home, didn't get out of the court. They lost that first game to Argentina. But having said that, South Africa lost in 2019, their opening game as well, and they went all the way through to beat England in the final. So it doesn't really matter. And Antoine Dupont talks about keeping the fans alive, keeping the team alive, really playing with joy and playing with that je ne sais quoi that they've become so accustomed to. So France, definitely the favorite, and deservedly so. But and New Zealand equally, Alex. They won it 3 times, won it at home. One of the only two sides that won it at home, and have talent throughout their entire team.
Yeah, and if you look, like, it would be an upset if one of those two big teams didn't come through. Uruguay, they're a team that, last World Cup upset Fiji. They've had their moments. They actually beat the United States to secure their place in this competition. Namibia, always game, but again, maybe looking for that one big moment. Italy will have something to say about this because they've had their moments in the Six Nations, Dan. We've seen them, the expansive rugby that they try and play. Who knows, could they play a spoiler? But really, for me, it's how these two teams match up on the first day. And the way that this group lines up with the other pool in the quarterfinal is massive. France are coming in with some injuries as well. I think there's 4 or 5 unavailable for the opening game. There's a lot of pressure on them at home. Do you think that they'll be able to stand up to that? Or do you think some of these big players missing could, tip it to a New Zealand?
Yeah, within the technical side of things, France have all the parts of the game you want, and certainly, Fabien Galtier, their head coach, is certainly one of the magicians, of French of old, and Sean Edwards, has brought that spice, that detail, that defensive nuance to them. So certainly, I think they're prepared. Italy, as you said, they almost beat France in Rome in the Six Nations this past year. 5 points right at the end. You and I were on the edges of our seats and calling that game for NBC. So certainly with Enge Capuzzo and Garbisi and Lamaro, their captain, in the back row, and they certainly have class throughout, and they've been surging. They beat Wales and the year before in the Six Nations, so they've been right on the edge. So they could absolutely cause an upset. Namibia, they're 0 for 22. I don't see them. 5 or 6 guys in the MLR, right? So some American fans will, pay attention to them. And of course, Uruguay, beating Fiji, they could upset. But I think this is France and New Zealand by a far stretch.
I agree. I think New Zealand are a team that, they had that little stumble at Twickenham against South Africa, which maybe has dipped them under the radar a little bit to people, but I felt like they were coming in with momentum and hype. If you watch the team that played in the Rugby Championship, significantly different to the team that was there that year before. I do think they're on the upward curve. But for me, France, as long as they don't succumb to the pressure, are my tournament favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. And 2011, 2015, those New Zealand times, maybe they were a little bit better than this one. They're not as deep, but they're well gelled this year, right? They're that dual threat of 10, 15, Bowden Barrett playing in along with his two other brothers starting. Sam Cane, maybe a little bit undersized than New Zealand had in those two previous wins, but certainly they can beat anybody on their day. They're the All Blacks, for goodness gracious.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. Almost people had written them off a year ago. I think don't write them off this year. The All Blacks found their mojo back to where they should be when they come into these big tournaments. But that wraps up
absolutely.
Pool A. And I think now it's time, Dan, to look ahead to Pool B. All right, Dan, it's time to look at Pool B. And this is another spicy one with two juggernauts. A lot of people's tournament favorites and probably one of the teams of the last 2 years, Ireland, have defending champions South Africa in that group. Just to make it a little bit harder, you've also got a Scotland team that has beaten teams of this nature. Then you've got Tonga. Then you've got Romania. These two pools, A and B, are, some people have been talking about, if they do the draws closer to the tournament where the world rankings maybe would avoid some of this. But from a spectator point of view, that is a pretty blockbuster group stage to have a go at. And we actually have, South Africa versus Scotland on the Sunday this weekend on the 10th on NBC. What do you make of the group?
Yeah, certainly, 5 of the top 5 in the world, right? Ireland, number 1 in the world, Scotland, number 5, and of course, South Africa, number 2 in the world. Look, this Ireland team has never gotten out of the quarterfinals. The expectations, number 1 in the world of all Irish, 35 million, at least on St. Patrick's Day in the United States, will all be cheering this Irish side. You got a little bit of Irish in you, I think, through your mom, and all that kind of stuff. So, everyone is looking forward to Ireland doing well. Scotland, this belief, this inner belief, they've been playing so well under Gregor Townsend. The loss of Stuart Hogg, retiring will be a loss, but Duhan Vandermeer, right? Finn Russell, they have stardust throughout their side, and certainly Tonga, of course, the smallest population, 100,000 people only on that island, but they've been able to recruit because of the change in the laws, all these ex-All Blacks and Charles Piutau and others. So they have a shot, and Romania, they're 5th for a reason. They got beat by the United States. They got beat by Italy in the last warm-up game. So certainly the top 3 all about this pool.
Yeah, and South Africa are coming in with some serious momentum. Maybe had not the greatest start to the Rugby Championship, but founding their feet. And then it came with that decimation of the All Blacks at Twickenham. I think their physicality, their ability is going to be probably the X factor in that group. Can Ireland and Scotland play their games or find the way to manage them? They did quite well against them in the autumn, but I always think World Cups are another level. Teams have more time, more depth, more preparation. This is the ultimate test for Ireland, which we've been calling maybe on and off for 2 years. Some people occasionally look at France as the best team in the world. They need to prove themselves in this group. And it's going to be really the first time where they have so much expectation and pressure on them that they are coming in, not just as a team that you expect to get to the quarterfinal, but a team that you're expecting to go all the way. And then the other thing is there's high stakes in this group. Depending on which way the places match up, really sets up your your quarterfinal matchups and which way the tournament and everything goes as well. So there's a lot of pressure coming into this group with some exciting matchups. And then, Scotland are just this team, which I don't think anyone could sleep on. I think they have the forwards to handle all the teams. I think they have the back line. They have the kicking game. They have the defense. They have the X factor transition attack play. They just got to come out and actually do it. We've always been saying, could this be Scotland's year? Are they where we want them to be? Are they this team or something? But they've never quite gotten to the point where they can back it up consistently. And to win a World Cup, really, you might lose one in the group, but you've got to win, 6 of your 7 games really is the minimum standard to win a World Cup, other than maybe the odd exception. Do Scotland have that in them?
Yeah, certainly the inspiration of South Africa coming back from 4 months, later from an ACL, Saya Kolosi, the heartbeat, he came right back into that side. It was just remarkable in that All Black win that they had, certainly. And Ireland, right? They've never been out of the quarterfinals. They have the most intricate game plan. They play the fastest of anybody out there. Certainly you could put pressure on them because South Africa is the simplest of the game plans. As you said, they want to beat you physically and unlock, have Stardust as well. And Scotland, as you said, they have all the game that they need to, but they need to have some sort of a spark. Alex, I think it's about absorbing pressure. These best teams in the world are going to put pressure on you. Can you do that? Can you stay disciplined? Can you, factor in on your own goal line and come out with a win, get an out by them without giving penalties away? Can you do that and then go on attack? Each one of these teams in the top three in this pool certainly can do that, and it'll be awesome to watch. And as you said, once the crossover is between Pool A and Pool B in the quarterfinals, 5 teams, or 3 of those 5 teams, are going to be out at that point. And that's, as you said, with the draw, it was almost 3 years ago, December of 2020, they did that draw. And as you also said, they're going to fix that, I think, going forward, so it's more in line with what the rankings today. But having said that, certainly some of these teams are going to be out, but so cherish, the pool rounds of Pool A and Pool B.
Must-see TV in this Rugby World Cup, and I think that wraps up Pool B really well. So, Dan, let's get into Pool C, and another pretty tasty one here. Lots of good teams across this one. You've got Wales, who've been struggling up and down for form. You've got a Fiji team that seems to be surging and fitting their stride. An Australia team under Eddie Jones that has a lot of question marks. Georgia, very physical, and then really a dark horse of a bit of an unknown at this World Cup in Portugal. Haven't seen them for a while, but you and me will know them as they were the ones who qualified over the United States in the World Rugby Repechage for this competition. Shows what they're capable of. What do you make of this group?
Well, Fiji are the highest ranked team right now over Wales and over Australia. So they certainly are playing. They have a backroom staff. They have a system in place now. Their discipline is sky high. The Fijian Drua that play in the Super Rugby Pacific are week in and week out giving the Europe, talent and organization and structure for what they did. That probably was the old Fiji, right? That you couldn't blend that team together and really play a system and a structure, which you and I both know. And at the highest test level, you have to play not only a physical, not only a flair game, but also a disciplined game. So they have all these things going for them, coming into this. Australia, Eddie Jones, what else are you going to say to that, right? He's a mouthpiece. He's a cartoon caricature. It's all things, but he can win, right? And he can bring a team together. So he's picked some guys. He's left some guys at home. Team and Gatlin. They have those 4, 5, 6 guys that played 3 or 4 World Cups and a new co-captains, on their team who are young. So he's trying to blend a team together. And of course, as you said, Georgia, they're knocking on the door of the Six Nations. They want to play in the Six Nations. They've beaten a few teams. They have a young, talented, the entire Georgian population is behind this. And Portugal, man, do they have a back line. Yeah, I don't know if they have the forwards to back up that back line, but they have some talent, and they're going to score some tries against the team in this pool, Alex.
It's really stacked. And for me, I think Wales, I don't think they're ready yet to really excel at this World Cup. Similar to, I think, England are in a bit of a transition period, new coach, time, change, unclear identity and real, of how you want to play, and enough years sort of ingrained on that journey to a World Cup. I think Australia could fall simmer, but I think they have better players than Wales. So, they might get their act together as time and the pressure of the tournament. I think Fiji have a real strong chance of winning this group. They're high ranked. They just beat England. They tooled England up at the set piece, which is, one of the areas that you would think might undo them at a Rugby World Cup. And then looking at the size of the pack, the back line, the physicality, their depth now as well. Like, I'm going to call it now. I think Fiji win this group, and I probably think Australia comes second, and it sets off bombshells into the quarterfinals. What do you reckon, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the tightest or most juggling pool that can be out there. I agree with you on Wales. I do think with Tulupe Faletau, Liam Williams, Lee Halfpenny, those guys can bring, Dan Bigger can bring some consistency to them. But they have to step up. They're not gelled. They haven't been playing well. And certainly Australia, they played France, even though that scoreline was like 33-17 or something like that, right? They played really well. They had their moments. And so I think that some of these young guns, and they have, Will Skelton's like, 280, 290, right? And those guys, and they have had some injuries. They have had some selections. So the two-time champions might not feel like they can get as far, but don't sleep on any of these teams. And look, it's not a bolter for you to say Fiji winning this pool. They have that much talent and that much more organization than they have ever had before.
Agreed, mate. Well, what a way to wrap up C, and let's get into Pool D. And now the final pool in Pool D. This one, again, very congested and hard to sort of call your clear favorites. You've got England, obviously struggling in the Borthwick era for finding their real form. You've got Samoa, you've got Japan, you've got Argentina, and you've got Chile, Dan, who are, a little bit spicy, no pun intended, but maybe. But really, for me, I'm not sure where England are at, and that's one of the big questions. Could they click into gear and kick on? Absolutely believe. Steve Borthwick saying that the players feel that they've been written off too soon, and I think there's a lot of fairness and merit in that statement, because I do think it's sometimes too early, but there's clear warning signs of frustrations that it hasn't clicked yet really at all, and I don't think people are seeing a lot of things that add up to them that this is going to be England's time to surge. Haven't had the best sort of games in this run-up in the summer and the warm-up games, but a lot of people are comparing this potentially to an 07 moment where they came in, ragtag army, coaches in disarray, and found their way all the way to a final and kept it close. So who knows, but I'm not 100% sure on that one yet. Japan, for me, have overperformed the last two World Cups. I don't know if everything's aligned in the same way it has been previously for them at the World Cup, like last year with the home World Cup, the super team, the build-up, but I still expect them to perform very well. Argentina are a bit of an unknown. Then the Rugby Championship been so up and down at times. When they're on, I think they could win this group. And then Samoa, another dark horse, because I honestly feel, this is the best Samoa team we're going to see ever. They've accumulated all their best players. They've got loads of guys back from the new World Rugby and catchment rules. They've got Salala Mapasua, Tana Umanga bringing the mana in the coaching team. From all I'm hearing, that is a very happy camp that are quietly feeling like they could go rough up some of these teams and find their way into the quarterfinal. And then Chile, another team that made it so the United States wouldn't make it to the World Cup. They potentially could play spoiler to someone, but probably, the least favored team of the group for me.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to bring this pool with the England side of it. You certainly did there, Alex. I can't say much more about England. The inconsistencies of the past 2 or 3 years of selection, settled sides win World Cups, sides that know who their identity is, and what they do. It doesn't mean that you pointed out that they can't go on a run. They can't find form as this tournament. They have all those talented players, but in 07 they had World Cup winners, on that team still, right? They had the Delalios, they had the Tyndalls, they had those guys, right? So who were the guys that are going to step up? They certainly have a number of guys that, in the improbable run, they went to the 19 World Cup final, right? So they have several of those guys. I believe that in your heart of hearts that it's hard to see them getting out of post the quarterfinal, right? Australia, or according to you, might play Fiji, right? In that regard, if they do go on a form, and then of course they're going to face against Pool A and Pool B, so it's hard to see them getting there. But having said that, in 2015 they had all this hype, a lot of other expectation, and they didn't get out of the quarterfinals as well. So Jekyll and Hyde, all about England.
Didn't get out the group. Didn't get out the group even. I remember that one.
Yeah. Exactly. So, in Argentina, you're exactly right. They play, they're like a lesser France, in a sense that, their consistency a little bit below that. But do they have the abilities? Absolutely. Do they have the capabilities, from forwards to back to game plans? Michael Checa has taken teams to World Cup finals. So he and their as their coaching staff and their structure has that ability. Chile, they are who they are, right? Again, they have one or two players. Fernandez, their fly half, went on that run against the United States down in Chile and, stole that game or won that game, right? And it was really impressive. Japan, I agree with you. They just don't have the firepower, but they can raise. They have Mike, captain is awesome, across the board. So look, and Samoa, I played against these teams a lot, right? And Samoa are probably the most physical side in the world, right? But they have more arrows, they have more, strings to their bow now. They have a consistency, as you said, the hot off the press. Their camp is really squared away. They're happy. They're going into this. Samoa in France, it tends to perform. A lot of those players play over there, on a consistent basis, like Fiji, so they know the country very, very well. So, like Pool C, but I like you. I think that England will come out of it, but you never know.
You never know. And I think it's fair game, that, Paul. I think, TBD. I think it's definitely Argentina, England, and Samoa for me, which I don't know which way those three are going to stack up in the order. So I think that's what we want when we come into World Cups, some uncertainty, some competitive matches. Might be frustrating for a few teams that they've got stacked groups, but from us as spectators, what a result that we get to see some of the best teams playing each other in the group stages, not just the quarterfinals and the knockout rounds. It really sets up a fantastic World Cup down, which across all our platforms here, we've got all games available live on Peacock TV. We've got a number of broadcasts across CNBC and NBC. We're really actually spoiled for choice here. Final words on this World Cup before we get ready for it.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. France are prepared. They're going to have record crowds. All the venues throughout the country, north, south, east, and west, from Nantes to Toulouse, to Bordeaux, to Paris itself, quarterfinals in Marseille at the Velodrome. This is a cultural phenomenon. You just tune in to the arrivals of the players. 12,000 people at the Ireland training, the Fijians singing, Dan Bigger and Wales, speaking in French. It's such a cultural phenomenon. I think we have about 1 through 12, give or take, that can upset each other, across the board in each of these pools. So it will be a magnificent World Cup. It should be fun. As you said, we got you covered on NBC. All the games are live, on Peacock, and we'll be bringing you some of these special games on the weekend between you and I. Some re-airs on NBC, and of course the semifinals and exclusively on Peacock. So get it now. And the final on NBC in studio. I think it's with Lee Diffie and you and I. So that'll be awesome. So can't wait on a personal level. And as a fan, it's really exciting. Maybe there will make me a little bit of a savant across the board versus, pecking on the U.S. side. So I can't wait, Alex.
Same here, mate. You summed it up well. Everyone watching this, don't miss it. We'll see you very soon.